Imagine starting your day with a familiar routine only to stumble upon something so bizarre that it turns your world upside down. This is exactly what happened to Farmer Eli when a single peculiar egg appeared in the most unexpected place. What began as a curious discovery quickly unraveled into a mystery so strange it left everyone questioning what could possibly come next. While feeding his chickens, Farmer Eli stumbled upon an oddity, an egg with a peculiar, almost rubbery shell. It felt strange in his weathered hands, unlike any of the thousands he'd picked up over the years. Compelled by a mix of intrigue and concern, he decided it was time to see what was inside. As the shell cracked open, Eli's usual calm demeanor gave way to a startled exclamation. "Stand back!" Eli dropped the egg on the ground and jumped backward. He quickly called 911, knowing this was something sinister. It surely wasn't one of his chickens who had laid that egg, so how on earth did it end up on his land? The egg's smell was feral, and Eli began to gag. If one of his chickens had eaten the egg, they would have gotten very sick. When the police arrived, they all flinched at the sight of the egg. Eli was stunned to hear what the egg actually was. But what was inside the egg? Who had placed the egg on Eli's land? And what could have happened if he didn't find it? Every morning, Eli would walk in the morning sun, feeding his chickens and picking up their eggs. They had their own coop, but some chickens preferred to lay their eggs in the grass. So Eli always kept his eyes open for a stray egg. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw something that looked a bit out of place. At first, he thought it was a potato, but when Eli came closer, he saw it actually looked more like an egg. The placement was strange, though, as none of his chickens came to this part of his land. The egg didn't look normal, so Eli's mind raced with what could be inside. Was it a chicken egg, or from another animal? He looked around him and found a small stick. He carefully poked the side of the egg and realized its shell was softer than usual chicken eggs. It almost looked rubbery. Thinking it could be a prank, Eli decided to pick it up. He used a handkerchief to pick up the egg and carefully carried it inside his house. Eli yelled to his son, "Hurry, get the safety gear." With every precaution in place, Eli tapped the egg gently against the bucket. The hissing grew louder, and suddenly the egg cracked wide open. Instead of a chick or yolk, a neon green foam exploded, covering the bucket and nearly missing their faces. "What in the world?" Eli exclaimed. His son, both scared and fascinated, stepped closer, his curiosity piqued by this bizarre turn of events. Realizing the potential danger, Eli's protective instincts kicked in. "We need to clean this mess safely," he instructed, eyeing the sizzling foam on the wooden table. They grabbed baking soda from the kitchen to neutralize the unknown substance, working together like a hazmat team in a movie. Once the immediate danger seemed under control, Eli noticed something even more worrying. The foam had etched a mark into the wood, hinting at its corrosive nature. Their cleanup was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Eli and his son exchanged a glance, wondering, who could it be at this hour? They opened all the windows, trying to chase the foul odor away with fresh air. While cleaning, Eli's son found something shiny within the goo. "Dad, look!" he exclaimed, holding up a small metallic object. They rinsed it off, revealing what looked like a tiny chip or a piece of sophisticated technology. This discovery added more mystery to the situation. What was this doing inside an egg? And more importantly, where did the egg come from? Eli picked up the phone, dialing with a steady hand. His voice was calm as he explained the situation to the dispatcher, though his words sounded unbelievable even to his own ears. "An egg with some kind of chemical inside," he described. He and his son exchanged anxious glances, waiting for the operator's response. Every car noise had them peering out the window, hoping to see the flashing lights of the police or any sign of the help that was promised. Finally, headlights swept into the driveway, but it wasn't the police. A nondescript van with no markings pulled up, and two figures stepped out clad in what looked like hazmat suits. Eli and his son exchanged puzzled looks. Who were these people, and how did they know about the situation? The police officers, grimacing, made their way through the living room with their sleeves over their noses. The officers nodded, immediately deciding to get everyone outside. The seriousness of their faces told Eli this was no ordinary situation. The family and the police gathered in the backyard for a briefing. The decision was clear. Eli's house needed to be sealed off for safety. Yellow tape went up, creating a barrier between them and their own home. His main concern now was the well-being of his son, who stood silently by his side. Soon a team in hazmat suits arrived, moving with precision toward the house. They entered through the front door, which Eli had left wide open. The forensics team worked diligently, taking pictures and bagging evidence. Eli tried to get a better view, but an officer gently held him back, explaining they needed to keep the area clear. An ambulance rolled into the driveway, its arrival adding another layer of seriousness to the situation. Paramedics approached Eli and his son, explaining they needed to check them for any exposure to harmful substances. As they were led to the ambulance for a quick examination, Eli found small comfort in the swift response. The paramedics moved efficiently, their professionalism a small comfort in the midst of chaos. Next came the examinations. With gloves and flashlights, the paramedics checked every inch of Eli and his son for any signs of contact with the mysterious substance. They took their vitals, asked if they felt unusual in any way, and made notes on their clipboards. After the medical checks, Eli's frustration bubbled to the surface. He approached the nearest officer, desperate for any information about what they were dealing with. But the officer's response was non-committal, advising patience until the experts had more to say. The police and forensic team continued their work, cordoning off areas and collecting samples. Eli's frustration boiled over when neighbor Greg tried to offer his help. The offer felt hollow, considering their past disputes. "I think it's best you leave, Greg," Eli said, his voice firm and cold. Greg's attempt to show concern seemed disingenuous to Eli. There was an awkwardness in the air, a reminder of the unresolved issues that lay between them. As Greg turned to leave, the awkwardness lingered. Eli watched him go, a mix of relief and additional worry clouding his thoughts. The encounter had been brief but intense, leaving both men more aware of the distance between them. Despite the night's drama, Eli's focus returned to his son and the unresolved mystery of the hazardous egg. The seriousness of the police surrounding his property underscored the gravity of the situation. Eli couldn't help but feel isolated as the investigation continued, enveloping his home like a thick fog. The sight of officers meticulously combing through his yard, where he had spent countless peaceful mornings, was disconcerting. Though Greg had left, the timing of his visit lingered in Eli's mind, casting a shadow of doubt. Why now? Despite the chaos, Eli couldn't shake the suspicion that there was more to Greg's sudden appearance. With his home cordoned off and his neighbor turned away, Eli stood on his property feeling more alone than ever. After the police escorted Greg away, Eli stood in the yard, lost in thought. He tried to make sense of why Greg would show up at such a chaotic time. Was it mere curiosity or something more? The visit left Eli with more questions than answers, and he couldn't help but wonder about the underlying reasons for Greg's unexpected appearance. Amidst the turmoil, the paramedics gave Eli and his son the all-clear, a small relief in the midst of chaos. However, the sight of their home still off limits, surrounded by caution tape, was a hard pill to swallow. Eli's wife arrived home, her expression a mix of concern and disbelief as she took in the scene. With the situation escalating, the search for more eggs became more frantic. Eli, his family, and the investigators combed through the property, the possibility of finding more such dangers lurking in the grass, making their efforts even more urgent. Eli wrestled with his wife's suspicions about who might be responsible for the eggs. Despite her convincing arguments, he hesitated to share these thoughts with the police. Eli and his wife stood in their backyard, the sight of the recent chaos sparking a hushed but intense discussion. They weighed their options, debating whether to act on their suspicions or to wait for more evidence. Their debate was abruptly interrupted when Eli's son shouted from the edge of the property, holding up what appeared to be another one of those strange eggs. The discovery confirmed their worst fears. This was no accident. The presence of more eggs around their farm underscored the severity of the threat they were facing. Back inside their home, Eli and his wife continued their discussion, now with a sense of urgency. They went back and forth on the merits of caution versus the necessity of taking decisive action. The discovery of additional eggs made it clear that sitting back was no longer an option. They had to find a way to protect their farm and family from further harm. The evidence was clear and pointed to a deliberate effort to harm them. With a heavy heart, Eli knew it was time to share his and his wife's suspicions with the police. As he spoke to the police, it was clear that what seemed like harmless competition hid deeper, more sinister intentions. This revelation shed new light on the situation, making everyone look at the events through a new lens. The investigation into Greg revealed unsettling truths about the undercurrents within the community. This shift in perspective was a wake-up call, highlighting the dangers of unchecked rivalry and the lengths to which some would go to come out on top. The police's decision to extend their investigation to Greg's farm marked a critical turning point. With a search warrant in hand, they meticulously combed through his property, looking for any evidence that could link him to the sabotage. The community watched in suspense as what was once a quiet dispute between neighbors escalated into a full-blown criminal investigation, signaling a move toward accountability and justice. At Greg's farm, the police found undeniable evidence that tied Greg to the case. He had buckets full of the same liquid, with empty eggshells lying next to it, ready to be filled. These materials were identical to the contents found in the eggs on Eli's property, directly implicating Greg in the sabotage. Greg had no other choice than to confess. Greg's eventual confession, though shocking, opened the door to resolving the deep-seated issues between him and Eli. He admitted to planting the eggs, which contained a mixture of pesticides and herbicides, so Eli's crops would die and he would earn more money. He never wanted anyone to get hurt and expressed how sorry he felt for letting things get so out of hand. After his confession, Greg was taken into custody, his face a mix of regret and resignation. The case against Greg set new legal and social standards for handling agricultural sabotage. The community grappled with the situation's complexity, understanding the need for legal consequences while also recognizing the importance of compassion and support for struggling farmers. This balance of justice and empathy sparked discussions on how to better address the underlying issues leading to such drastic measures. Eli's decision not to press charges came as a surprise to many, reflecting his deep belief in second chances and the power of forgiveness. This choice wasn't easy, but it was driven by a desire to heal the community and move forward from the incident. Eli's gesture extended an olive branch to Greg, offering him a path to redemption and setting an example of reconciliation over retribution. Eli and Greg's agreement to start anew, putting their rivalry behind them, was a significant moment for the entire community. This decision to embrace forgiveness and work together for the common good was a testament to their growth and the resilience of their relationship. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one based on mutual respect and cooperation, with the hope of fostering a stronger, more united community.